The message came at 300 hours when the stars outside the viewport of the Resolute burned cold and distant. Captain Park was not sleeping. He had not slept well in 7 years, not since the day his younger sister vanished from a colony ship near the border. The official report said pirates. The unofficial whispers said something worse. Now, reading the classified document on his screen, felt his blood turn to ice. 312 children, human children, found in an underground facility on a planet called 4. The planet belonged to the Dominion, one of the most powerful species in the Galactic Coalition. The same coalition that humanity had joined only 30 years ago, grateful for the chance to sit at the table with the elder races of the galaxy. Read the names, his hands began to shake when he found one he recognized. Park, age 12 when taken, now 19, alive. His sister was alive. On the medical ship Mercy's Light, Doctor walked through corridors that smelled of fear and antiseptic. She had been there for 15 years, studying alien life across 100 worlds. Nothing had prepared her for what she found on 4. The children sat in rows of beds, their eyes empty, their heads marked with surgical scars. Many did not speak. Some could not remember their own names. The youngest was 6 years old. He had been taken from a playground on Mars while his mother looked away for 30 seconds. Knelt beside a girl who stared at nothing. "Can you tell me your name?" The girl's lips moved slowly, as if she had forgotten how to form words. "My name is Ha. I am 14 years old. I was taken when I was 7. They put things in my head. They wanted to see how human children think." Felt tears burn her eyes. She had read the initial reports. The believed that human brains, especially young human brains, held the key to faster communication across space. Human neural plasticity was unique in the galaxy, so they took children and cut them open to find out why. "You are safe now," whispered. "We are taking you home." Looked at her with eyes far too old for her young face. "They told us no one would come. They said humans were too weak, too small, too afraid of the coalition." Took the girl's hand. They were wrong. On Earth, in the Great Hall of the United Nations Space Command, Ambassador Minu stood before the Emergency Council. His face was calm, but those who knew him could see the rage burning beneath the surface. "We have confirmed the presence of 312 human children held in facilities," he said. "Medical examinations show evidence of neural surgery, psychological conditioning, and prolonged isolation. Some children have been held for over a decade. They conducted these experiments with full knowledge and approval of their government." The council erupted in fury. Representatives shouted demands for action, for war, for justice. Minu raised his hand for silence. "I have already submitted an emergency petition to the Galactic Coalition Council. I have requested an immediate investigation and the return of all human children held in space." A young officer in the back spoke up, and what did they say? Minu's jaw tightened. "They said they would review our petition within the standard, approximately 47 years. The silence that followed was more terrible than any shout. Commander received the news while training her Special Forces team on a moon base far from Earth. She was known as the finest soldier humanity had ever produced, decorated in 3 conflicts, feared by enemies and respected by allies. But when she read the list of children found on 4, the weapon dropped from her hands. Her daughter, her beautiful daughter, taken during a diplomatic mission when she was only 5. They had smiled and offered condolences. They had promised to search their space for the pirates responsible, and all along they had her. Did not cry, she did not scream. She simply stood very still for a long moment. Then she picked up her weapon and resumed training. But something had changed behind her eyes, something cold and patient and absolutely without mercy. That night she received a secure message from Captain Park. They had served together once, years ago. She knew his sister had been among the taken. The message was short. "We need to talk, encrypted channel, 2200 hours." At the appointed time, connected to the channel and found not just, but a dozen other officers. All of them had lost someone. All of them had been waiting for years, for answers that never came. "The coalition will not help us," said. "They have already decided that human children are an acceptable price for peace with the. They will delay and make excuses, and in 47 years they will issue a formal apology and a small payment to the families." "Then what do we do?" someone asked. His eyes were hard as stone. "We do what humans have always done when our children are threatened. We go and get them ourselves, and we make sure no one ever touches them again." Commander leaned forward. "They are one of the most powerful species in the galaxy. They have technology we cannot match, ships we cannot defeat. The coalition will condemn us. We could start a war we cannot win. Maybe admitted, or maybe the galaxy has forgotten something important about humans. We are not an old species. We are not wise or patient or diplomatic. We are young and angry, and we protect our children with everything we have. They think we are weak because we smile and negotiate and follow their rules. They are about to learn how wrong they are. Thought of her daughter's face. The last time she saw, the little girl had been laughing at a butterfly. That laughter had haunted dreams for years. "I am in," she said quietly. "Whatever it takes, whatever it costs, I am in." One by one, the others agreed. By the end of the night, they had the beginning of a plan. It would take time. It would take resources. It would require them to lie to the coalition and build in secret and prepare for a war that might destroy them all. But their children were waiting, and humans, as the galaxy was about to learn, did not abandon their children. Not ever. Not for politics, not for peace, not for anything in the universe. Captain closed the channel and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, his sister was still alive, still waiting, still hoping that someone would come. "Hold on," he whispered to the darkness. "We are coming, and when we arrive, the galaxy will never forget what happens to those who steal human children." The stars burned on, cold and indifferent, but humanity was no longer cold. Humanity was no longer indifferent. Humanity was awake, and humanity was angry. The Galactic Coalition Council met in a chamber of white crystal and floating lights, where the representatives of 47 species gathered to govern the stars. Ambassador Minu stood alone at the speaking platform, his human frame small against the towering aliens around him. "The evidence is clear," Minu said, his voice steady despite the anger in his heart. 312 human children were taken from our ships and colonies. They were subjected to medical experiments without consent. They were tortured. We demand immediate action. The representative rose from his seat. His name was, and his scaled face showed no emotion. "The human ambassador misunderstands the situation. These children were orphans, rescued from dangerous space. We provided them with medical care and shelter. If some procedures were performed, they were for the children's benefit." Minu felt his hands form fists behind his back. "Benefit, you drilled holes in their skulls. You isolated them for years. Some cannot remember their own families." "Cultural differences," said smoothly. "Humans are new to the galaxy. You do not understand our methods." The Grand Arbiter, a tall being named, raised a limb for silence. "We will investigate these claims through proper channels. Ambassador, your petition will be reviewed according to standard procedures." "How long?" Minu asked. "These matters are complex, perhaps 40 to 50 standard years." Minu stared at the council. 47 species, ancient and powerful, watching him like he was a child throwing a tantrum. Not one of them spoke in his support. Not one of them seemed to care that human children had been cut open for experiments. He bowed his head, turned, and walked out of the chamber without another word. On Earth, President Sora watched the broadcast of the council meeting in her private office. She was a small woman with gray hair and calm eyes, but those who knew her understood that her gentleness hid a will of iron. She had led humanity through 2 crises. This would be the third. Her advisors stood around her, waiting for instructions. "They refused," one said. "They dismissed us completely." Sora nodded slowly. "Yes, they did." "What do we do? We cannot fight the entire coalition." Sora stood and walked to the window. Outside, the city of Geneva sparkled with lights. Millions of humans lived their lives, trusting their leaders to keep them safe, trusting that the galaxy was not as cruel as it seemed. "Contact Admiral Shin," she said quietly. "Tell him to activate Protocol Homecoming and close all diplomatic channels with the coalition." Her advisors stared at her. All of them, President, that will. "I know what it will do." Sora turned to face them, and her eyes were no longer calm. They burned with something ancient and terrible, the same fire that had driven humans to cross oceans and climb mountains and reach for the stars. "They took our children, they hurt our children, and they expect us to wait 50 years for justice while they continue their experiments. No, we are done waiting. We are done asking permission. We are done being the quiet new species that follows the rules." She walked toward the door. "Prepare the assembly for a closed session. It is time humanity remembered what we are capable of when our children are threatened." The galaxy noticed when humanity went silent. At first, the coalition species thought it was a diplomatic tactic, a way to pressure them into faster action. They expected humans to return to the negotiating table within weeks, apologizing for their rudeness and begging for help. But the weeks turned to months. Human ships from coalition space, trade agreements were suspended, communication channels closed, human colonies locked down their borders. The entire species simply disappeared from galactic affairs. The coalition sent messages. They received no response. They sent ambassadors. The ambassadors were turned away. They sent threats. The threats vanished into silence. What are they doing? The representatives asked each other. Are they giving up? Are they hiding? Only a few wise voices suggested a different answer. Perhaps, Counselor Myra said softly, they are preparing. No one listened to her. No one believed that the youngest species in the galaxy could challenge the established order. Humans were weak. Humans were primitive. Humans were nothing. That was their first mistake. Deep in the asteroid belt of Earth's solar system, Admiral Shin stood on the bridge of the Unstoppable, the largest warship humanity had ever built. Around him, in caverns hollowed from ancient rocks, 1,400 more ships waited in darkness. They had been building this fleet for 20 years, ever since the first human colonies began reporting strange disappearances near space. The government had suspected something terrible was happening. They had no proof, no evidence, but they prepared anyway. Now the preparation would be tested. The status report said, "All ships are ready, Admiral. Crews are trained. Weapons are loaded. We can launch within 6 hours." Nodded, he was an old man, by a lifetime of military service. He had seen war before, but never anything like what was coming, and the intelligence. Intelligence Director stepped forward. He was a thin man with sharp eyes, a former spy who had spent decades gathering secrets from across the galaxy. "We have mapped every military installation, every supply line, every leadership bunker. We know where they sleep, we know where they eat, we know where their children go to school." Their children. His face was expressionless. "We will not touch them. We are not monsters, but we want them to understand that we could. We want them to feel what our families felt." Accepted this with a slow nod, and the rescue plan. Operation Homecoming is ready. Commander will lead the ground assault on 4. Captain Park will provide fleet cover. We estimate a 92% success rate for extracting the children. 92%, and the other 8%. Met his eyes. Those children may not survive the rescue. They are too damaged, too fragile, but we will bring them home either way. No one stays behind. Turned to look at the fleet waiting in darkness. 1,400 ships, 2 million soldiers, the combined strength of every nation on Earth, united for the first time in history. "The coalition thinks we are weak," he said. "They think we will cry and complain and eventually accept their judgment. They have forgotten what humans did to reach the stars. We survived ice ages. We survived plagues. We survived wars that burned half our planet. And we kept going. We always kept going." He straightened his uniform. "Begin final preparations. In 3 days we launch, and the galaxy will learn why you never, ever take human children." That night a stealth ship slipped into space and extracted 1 passenger from 4. Her name was Ha. She was 14 years old. She had spent 7 years in captivity, subjected to experiments that would have broken an adult mind. But was not broken, she was angry. They brought her to a secure medical facility on Earth's moon. Doctors sat with her for hours, recording her testimony, spoke in a flat voice, describing everything she had seen and experienced. "They did this to others," said, "not just humans. I saw children from other species. Some died during experiments. They did not care. They threw the bodies away like garbage." "How long has this been happening?" asked. Looked at her with ancient eyes. "Centuries. The guards talked about it sometimes. They said no species ever fought back. Everyone was too afraid of the coalition." "And what did you think when they said that?" For the first time, something like a smile touched his face. "I thought they had never met humans. I thought that someday someone would come, and when they came, they would finally understand what fear really means." Reached out and took the girl's hand. "We are here now, and you were right." On the bridge of the Resolute, Captain watched the fleet assemble. In 48 hours they would strike. In 48 hours the galaxy would change forever. He thought of his sister, still waiting on 4. He thought of Commander's daughter. He thought of 312 children who had spent years believing no one was coming for them. "We are coming," he whispered, "and we are bringing hell with us." The stars waited, the fleet prepared, and across the galaxy, in 1,000 comfortable council chambers, the alien powers continued their ancient games, never suspecting that the youngest species was about to teach them a lesson they would never forget. Humanity was done playing by their rules. Humanity was going to war. The early warning system was the most advanced in the galaxy. It could detect a single ship from 3 light-years away. It had protected space for 10,000 years. It never saw the humans coming. At exactly 600 Galactic Standard Time, 1,400 human warships emerged from hyperspace in 3 coordinated waves. They appeared simultaneously at 14 different locations across territory, striking military bases, weapons factories, and command centers with perfect precision. High Commander was eating breakfast when the alarms began screaming. He rushed to his command center, his scales turning pale with shock as the reports flooded in. "Impossible," he whispered. "Our sensors should have detected them hours ago." "They came out of nowhere, Commander. Our entire Western defense grid is gone, destroyed in the first 60 seconds. Stared at the tactical display. Human ships moved across the screen like angry fire, burning through defenses as if they were made of paper. How? Humans do not have this technology. They are a primitive species. It appears, his aide said slowly, that they were hiding their true capabilities. Above the Planet 4, Captain Park led the assault fleet. His ship, the Resolute, cut through orbital defenses with weapons the Coalition had never seen. The humans had spent 20 years stealing technology, improving it, and inventing new systems that made this proud military look like children playing with toys. "All fighters launch," commanded. "Clear a path for the landing ships." Lieutenant led the fighter squadron into battle. He was young, only 25, but he flew like a demon possessed. His squadron tore through interceptors, creating a corridor of destruction that reached all the way to the surface. "Landing zone is clear," reported. "Ground team, you are green for insertion." On the lead landing ship, Commander checked her weapon for the 10th time. Her team of 200 soldiers sat in silence around her, their faces hard with determination. Every one of them had volunteered for this mission. Every one of them knew they might not survive. "Listen carefully," said as the ship descended through the atmosphere. "Our only objective is the children. We do not destroy more than necessary. We do not torture. We do not take revenge on guards who surrender. We are not here to become monsters. We are here to bring our children home." "What if they resist?" Sergeant asked. His eyes were ice. "Then we end them quickly and move on. But we do not enjoy it. We do not celebrate it. We are soldiers, not butchers. The galaxy is watching. We will show them what humanity really looks like." The ship touched down outside the research facility, was first through the door, moving through the corridors with deadly grace. Her team spread out behind her, systematically securing each section. The guards fought back at first. They believed their species was superior. They believed humans were weak and soft. They learned the truth in blood and screaming. But the humans did not torture. They did not gloat. When guards surrendered, they were restrained and left alive. When guards fought, they were killed with efficient precision. There was no hatred in the humans' eyes, only cold purpose. His team reached the children's cells first. She had seen the intelligence reports. She thought she was prepared. She was not. The children sat in rows of small boxes, barely large enough to lie down. Feeding tubes ran into their arms. Wires connected their heads to machines that blinked with cruel lights. Some children were crying. Some were silent. Some did not react at all when the doors opened. Felt tears running down her face as she began cutting the children free. "Medical teams, we need you now. We have found them." Across the facility, kicked down the door to the central laboratory. Inside, she found Ha waiting for her. The girl had insisted on returning, guiding the soldiers through the maze of corridors she had memorized during 7 years of captivity. "The youngest children are in the basement," said. Her voice was calm, but her hands were shaking. "There is a secret elevator behind that wall. They kept the special cases down there." "Special cases?" His face went empty, the ones who could not scream anymore. Placed a hand on the girl's shoulder. "Show us." They found 12 children in the basement. Some were barely alive. All had been subjected to experiments so terrible that even the hardened soldiers looked away. But they carried every single child out gently, carefully, as if they were made of precious glass. And then found her daughter. Was lying in a small bed in a corner room, her eyes closed, her breathing shallow. She was 12 now, no longer the 5-year-old who had laughed at butterflies. Her head was covered with scars. Her arms were thin as sticks. But she was alive. Whispered, kneeling beside the bed. "It is me. It is Mom." The girl's eyes opened slowly. For a long moment, she stared at without recognition. Then something flickered in her gaze, like a candle fighting against darkness. "Mom," the word came out broken, uncertain. "Is it really you?" Gathered her daughter in her arms, holding her tight, letting the tears fall freely. "It is really me. I am here. I came for you. I am so sorry it took so long." "I knew you would come," whispered. "They said no one would come, but I knew you would." In orbit, Captain received word that the extraction was complete. 308 children rescued alive. 4 had died during the operation, their bodies too damaged to survive the rescue. They would be brought home anyway. "Captain," his communications officer reported, "the High Commander is hailing us. He is demanding our surrender." Laughed, a sound without humor, put him on screen. High Commander appeared, his scaled face twisted with rage. "You will pay for this attack, human. The Coalition will destroy you. You have made enemies of the entire galaxy." Leaned forward in his chair. "You stole our children. You cut them open for experiments. You kept them in cages for years, and you thought we would do nothing. They were orphans, refugees, They had families," said quietly. "They had mothers and fathers who cried every night. They had siblings who never stopped searching. They had a species that loves its children more than life itself. You should have known better. This is an act of war, the Coalition." "The Coalition did nothing. We asked for help. They refused. Now we are handling the matter ourselves." His eyes hardened. "This is not an act of war, Commander. This is a rescue mission. But if you want war, we will give you war. Look at your military. Look at what we did in 6 hours. Imagine what we could do in 6 months." The screen went dark as cut the connection, but the message had been received, broadcast across the galactic network for all species to see. On a distant world, Counselor Myra watched the footage with tears streaming down her face. Her species had suffered under the 300 years ago. No one had come to save them. No one had cared enough to fight. "Finally," she whispered, "finally, someone who protects their young." The human fleet from space, carrying their children home. Behind them the Dominion burned, not destroyed but broken, humiliated, exposed to the galaxy as monsters who preyed on children. On the medical ship, Captain walked through the corridors until he found his sister. Was 19 now, a young woman with haunted eyes and trembling hands. She sat on a bed, staring at nothing. He said softly, "It is your brother." She looked up at him. For a moment there was nothing in her eyes, then recognition sparked, painful and slow. Her voice cracked. They said no one was looking for me. They said my family had forgotten." He knelt beside her and took her hands in his. "I never forgot, not for 1 day, not for 1 hour. I have been searching for you for 7 years, and now you are coming home." She fell into his arms, sobbing. Around them, similar scenes played out across the fleet. Parents finding children, siblings reunited, families made whole again. But knew this was not the end. The Coalition would respond. They would seek revenge. The galaxy had been shaken by what humanity had done. And the galactic powers would soon realize that this was only the beginning. Humanity had sent a message written in fire and blood: "Touch our children and we will find you. No matter how powerful you are, no matter how far you run, we will find you and we will make you pay." The stars had witnessed many empires rise and fall, but they had never seen anything quite like humanity unleashed. And they never would forget it. The Galactic Coalition Council assembled in emergency session for the first time in 200 years. Representatives from 47 species filled the great chamber, their voices rising in anger and confusion. At the center stood a single human, Ambassador Minu, surrounded by beings who wanted his species destroyed. Grand Arbiter raised his limbs for silence. Humanity stands accused of unprovoked military aggression against a sovereign coalition member. The attack on space has resulted in the destruction of 14 military installations, 7 orbital stations, and approximately 30,000 casualties. How does humanity respond to these charges? Minu stood straight, his face calm despite the hostile eyes staring down at him. Humanity responds with the truth. He raised his hand and holographic images filled the chamber. Children in cages, surgical scars on young heads, bodies thrown into disposal units, the testimony of survivors speaking in flat voices about years of torture. "They did not rescue orphans," Minu said. "They kidnapped children from 17 different species over the past 800 years. They used these children for neural experiments, attempting to unlock secrets of brain development. When the children were no longer useful, they were terminated." The chamber erupted in shouting. Some species called him a liar. Others demanded proof. but a few, like Counselor Myra, sat in stunned silence, remembering losses that had never been explained. We have evidence, Minu continued. We have survivor testimonies. We have records stolen from databases. They have been doing this for centuries, and the Coalition has either ignored it or actively covered it up. High Commander rose to his feet. Lies, fabrications designed to justify human aggression. We demand that these terrorists be handed over for prosecution. You want terrorists? Minu's voice went cold. Look in the mirror. You cut children open while they screamed for their parents. You kept them in isolation until they forgot their own names. You threw their bodies in the trash when you were done. And you did this while smiling at us in diplomatic meetings, pretending to be our friends. Enough, Grand Arbiter struck the speaking platform. These accusations require verification. Until then. Verification, a new voice rang through the chamber. The screens flickered, and suddenly every display showed the same image, a young human with a recording device standing in front of the research facility. War correspondent No had spent 3 months preparing for this moment. While the diplomats argued, he had been gathering evidence on 4. Now he broadcast everything to the entire galactic network. My name is No. I am a human journalist. Behind me is the facility where 312 human children were tortured for years, but they were not the only victims. He walked through the ruins, his camera capturing everything: empty cells, medical equipment covered in dried blood, files listing thousands of subjects from species across the galaxy. The kept records said, very detailed records. They documented every species they harvested children from. They noted which experiments worked and which failed. They calculated the optimal age for brain extraction. 800 years of horror, hidden behind coalition bureaucracy. In the council chamber, species who had lost children over the centuries began to realize the truth. They had not just targeted humans, they had targeted everyone. Counselor Myra stood, her ancient body trembling. 300 years ago, my species reported missing children near space. We were told it was pirates. We accepted this lie because we trusted the coalition. We trusted you. She pointed at Grand Arbiter. How many of our children died in those facilities? Could not meet her eyes. The situation is complex. It is not complex, Myra said. It is simple. They are monsters and the coalition protected them. Humanity is the first species brave enough to fight back, and you want to punish them for it. The chamber descended into chaos. Species turned against species. Old alliances crumbled. The careful political balance that had held the coalition together for thousands of years began to crack. On Earth, Doctor worked without sleep to help the recovered children. He was the best trauma psychologist humanity had, but nothing in his training had prepared him for this. Many children did not remember their parents. Some could not speak. A few would never be able to live normal lives. But slowly, carefully, he began to help them heal. One evening, a small boy named sat with him in the recovery garden. Was 8 years old. He had been taken when he was 3. He had no memory of life before the facility. Doctor said quietly, why are humans so angry about what happened to us? The said other species never cared when their children were taken. Knelt beside him, choosing his words carefully, because humans love their children very much. When someone hurts a child, every human feels that pain. It makes us want to protect all children everywhere. Even children who are not human. Even children who are not human, confirmed. A child is a child. They deserve to be safe and loved, no matter what species they are. Thought about this for a long moment. They do not understand that, do they? No, they do not, but they will learn. The boy nodded slowly. Good, I hope they learn it forever. In the Coalition Council, the debate raged for days. Finally, Grand Arbiter called for a vote on human sanctions. Before the vote could begin, a young human woman stepped forward to speak. Her name was Moon. She was 16 years old. She had spent half her life in captivity. The scars on her head were still healing. I was not going to speak today, said. Her voice was soft but carried through the silent chamber. I am just a child. What do I know about politics and diplomacy? She looked around at the assembled representatives, meeting their eyes one by one. But I know about fear. I know what it feels like to wake up in a cage, wondering if today is the day they take you to the surgery room. I know what it sounds like when children cry in the night, calling for parents who cannot hear them. I know what happens when you beg for mercy and no one answers. Tears ran down her face, but her voice stayed steady. We were children, human children, yes, but also children from your species. I saw them. I held their hands when they were scared. I watched some of them die, and the whole time I wondered, does anyone out there know? Does anyone care? She pointed at the delegation. They told us no one cared. They said the galaxy did not value children. They said we were just research material, easily replaced. For years, I believed them. Her voice hardened. Then the humans came. They did not file paperwork. They did not wait for permission. They came with fire and fury because their children were in pain. They came because humans protect their young. She turned to face the entire council. You can punish humanity if you want. You can call them aggressors. You can pass sanctions and make speeches about proper procedure. But ask yourselves, if it was your children in those cages, what would you have done? Would you have waited 50 years for a committee to decide their fate, or would you have burned the galaxy down to bring them home? The chamber was silent. Representatives looked at each other, at the floor, anywhere but at the young woman standing before them. We were children, repeated. We cried for our parents every night, and you all knew. You just did not care until humans made you care. She turned and walked out of the chamber, leaving silence behind her. The vote for sanctions failed. Species who had once supported their support. Within weeks, the coalition began investigating 800 years of covered-up atrocities. But in the shadows, they were planning something else. They could not defeat humanity through politics. They could not defeat humanity through military force. So they reached for something older, something buried, something that had been created long ago to ensure no species ever challenged them. High Commander stood in a secret chamber deep beneath the. Before him, ancient machines began to hum with terrible power. The Eternal Network, he whispered. Our ancestors created it to control lesser species. We were saving it for emergencies, but now. He activated the system. Across the galaxy, hidden transmitters began to wake. The network spread through communication systems like a virus, reaching toward billions of minds. If we cannot rule the galaxy, said, then we will control it, every species, every mind, every child. He smiled, his scales gleaming in the machine's cold light. Let the humans try to fight this. Far away on Earth, the recovered children suddenly screamed. Something was touching their minds, something cold and vast and hungry. And the final battle was about to begin. The screaming started at midnight. Across Earth, across the colonies, across every human settlement in space, the rescued children woke up crying. Their eyes rolled back, their bodies shook, and in their minds something ancient and terrible was trying to take control. Doctor rushed through the medical facility, watching children convulse in their beds. What is happening to them? It is the neural modifications, Doctor said, her face pale with fear. They did not just experiment on them. They installed something, a receiver. Something is broadcasting to their brains. In the command center, Admiral received reports from across the galaxy. The attack was not limited to human children. Every species that had ever lost children to the was experiencing the same thing. Billions of beings suddenly stopped what they were doing, their eyes going blank, their minds invaded by an alien signal. What is this? Demanded. Intelligence Director pulled up ancient records stolen from databases. They call it the Eternal Network, an artificial intelligence created 800 years ago. It was designed to control the neural patterns of other species. They used the children's experiments to refine the technology. Now they are activating it. Can we stop it? The source is on a central transmitter, heavily defended. If we destroy it, the network dies. Turn to the tactical display. That was surrounded by their remaining fleet, desperate and dangerous. Then we destroy it. Contact Commander. Tell her we have one more mission. Commander had not slept since the rescue. She had been sitting beside her daughter's bed, watching slowly heal. Now was screaming, her hands clutching her head, fighting against something invisible. Mom gasped between screams. Something is in my head. It wants me to hurt people. It wants me to obey. Held her daughter tight. Fight it. You are stronger than they know. Her communicator buzzed. She read the message and understood immediately. The only way to save her daughter was to destroy the source. I have to go, said softly. His hand grabbed her wrist with surprising strength. I know, but Mom, take us with you. What? How appeared in the doorway, her face pale but determined. Behind her stood Moon and a dozen other children, all fighting against the signal in their heads. We can feel it, said. The network. It is connected to us through the modifications. If you can get us close to the source, we might be able to shut it down from inside. That is too dangerous. You are children. We stopped being children the day they took us, said. Now we have a chance to use what they did to us against them. Let us help. Let us end this. Looked at these young people, and traumatized but unbroken. They had survived things that would have destroyed adults. They had every reason to hide, to be afraid, to let someone else fight. Instead, they wanted to save the galaxy. Suit up, said quietly. We leave in 1 hour. The human fleet jumped to with everything they had. This was not a surgical strike. This was a final battle. Either humanity would win, or the eternal network would spread until it controlled every mind in the galaxy. Captain led the assault, his ship cutting through defenders with desperate fury. Around him, other species had sent their own ships. Counselor Myra's people, others who had lost children to they fought side by side with humanity, united against a common enemy. Ground team is away, reported. Commanders, you have 90 minutes before we are overwhelmed. Make it count. On the surface, led her team through the burning capital city. They threw everything at them, soldiers, drones, automated weapons, but the humans kept pushing forward, driven by fury and love. Walked beside, her eyes half closed as she tracked the network's signal. Turn left. The transmitter is underground. There is a service entrance 50 meters ahead. How do you know that? I can see through the network's eyes now. It thinks I am part of it. It does not understand that I am using it. They reached the underground facility. Inside, the eternal network pulsed with cold light, its tendrils reaching across the galaxy to enslave minds. High Commander stood before it, surrounded by his personal guard. You cannot stop this, said. The network is too powerful. Soon every species will serve the galaxy will finally know peace under our control. Peace raised her weapon. You call slavery peace. Lesser species cannot govern themselves. They need guidance. They need order. They need us. No, a small voice came from behind. It was the 8-year-old boy who had spent most of his life in captivity. You are wrong. He stepped forward, and the other children followed. A dozen young people who carried the modifications in their heads. You put things in our brains, said. You thought it made us your tools, but we are not tools. We are humans, and we do not obey. The children closed their eyes. Together, they reached into the network with their modified minds. They did not try to fight it. They did not try to control it. Instead, they gave it something it had never encountered: love. Love for their families, love for each other, love for the strangers who came to rescue them, love for every child across the galaxy who had suffered as they had. The network was designed for control. It could not process compassion. It could not understand sacrifice. The emotions flooding through it were incomprehensible, contradictory, overwhelming. The machines began to shake. Lights flickered. Alarms screamed. What are you doing? Shouted. Stop them. But his guards never moved. The children's broadcast was reaching them too, filling their minds with feelings they had spent lifetimes suppressing. Some fell to their knees. Some wept. Some simply stood frozen, experiencing empathy for the first time in their lives. You wanted to control minds, said, her voice echoing through the chamber. You never understood that minds cannot be controlled. They can only be loved or feared, and love is stronger than fear, always. The eternal network exploded. The blast destroyed the transmitter, the facility, and High Commander himself. But the children were protected, wrapped in a shield of light that came from somewhere beyond technology. When the light faded, found them standing in the ruins, exhausted but alive, collapsed into her arms. Did we do it, Mom? Did we win? Looked around at the burning facility, at the silent machines, at the soldiers who had dropped their weapons and were staring at nothing. Yes, baby, you won. You saved everyone. In orbit, the fleet stopped fighting. Without the network to drive them, they surrendered. Across the galaxy, the signal died. Minds that had been invaded returned to normal. The nightmare was over. The Galactic Coalition reformed in the following months, but it was not the same coalition. New laws were written, new protections established. Ambassador Minu led the drafting of the Covenant of the Young, a document that guaranteed no child of any species would ever be experimented on again. Violations would be met with immediate, united response from all member species. President Sora addressed the galaxy one final time. We did not do this for power. We did not do this for territory. We did this because every child deserves to be safe. Threaten them again, and remember what happens when you wake the fury of those who love. 10 years passed. Ha earned her doctorate and opened a recovery center on Earth. Children from across the galaxy came to heal under her care. She never forgot what was done to her, but she turned her pain into purpose. Moon became the youngest ambassador in human history. She traveled the galaxy speaking for those who could not speak for themselves. Species that had once ignored humanity now listened when she spoke. Admiral Park visited his sister every weekend, had married, had children of her own, and learned to laugh again. The scars remained, but they no longer defined her. Commander retired from military service. She spent her days gardening with, who had grown into a brilliant young woman studying. Sometimes they talked about the past. Sometimes they simply enjoyed the silence of peace. And throughout the galaxy, species told their children a new story, a story about a young world called Earth, about a species that loved its children so fiercely that it challenged an ancient power and won, about how the galaxy learned that protecting the innocent was not weakness, but the greatest strength of all. The stars had seen empires rise and fall. They had witnessed wars and treaties and extinctions, but they had never seen anything like humanity, a species that would burn the galaxy to save its children and then rebuild it to protect everyone else's. In the end, the lesson was simple. Do not take human children. Do not hurt human children. Do not threaten human children. Because if you do, the humans will come for you. They will find you no matter where you hide, and they will show you why even the gods fear a parent's love. This was how humanity took its place among the stars, not through conquest or diplomacy, but through something far more powerful. Through love, through fury, through the eternal promise to protect the young. And the galaxy was never the same again.